Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. It's a great turnout. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. None of this happens without all of you. So thank you for being the sail behind our wits. We appreciate it. The wind behind our sails, we appreciate that so much. I really appreciate working with, now see, when Michael was the chief of staff in our office, he was Michael, and now he's Mike. And so I'm having a hard time adjusting to Mike. And I told him the other day, I said, we were talking about something. I said, congratulations, Mike. I appreciate what you've done. He said, oh, that's like my mom calling me Mike. He goes, I'd be weird with you, Terry Branstad, and you calling me Michael. So you just go ahead and call me Mike, and I'll feel better about that. But one thing I'm really grateful, we have David Young with us here tonight. I hope there's not other legislators in the audience. But David's in the House, Mike is in the Senate, and I really appreciate the relationship that we have. We work really well together. We communicate, we talk about the vision, and then we go out there and get it done. So I am very, very grateful to the legislature and the ability, because that's not true in all the states. It really isn't. I talk to a lot of my colleagues, and that's not the case. So we're very, very blessed to be able to do that, and we're just getting started. We got a lot more to do. And I'm excited to be back on the campaign trail with Senator Tim Scott. We've done a couple of events together, but I haven't been able to join you for a while, and I love, Tim, the fact that you were crisscrossing the state, you were listening to Iowans, you were talking to Iowans, you're talking about your vision for this country, and just applying common sense. I appreciate that so much. When I see his commercials or his ads on TV, I thought, oh, wow. I mean, he is just talking directly common sense to the people, and we appreciate that so very much. So thank you. I also want to just say thank you to all of you that are here tonight, because I'm telling you, I want to say thank you for being engaged. Thank you for caring about this country, about what we see happening from the Biden administration, for showing up, for continuing to engage. And I can tell you without hesitation, that's why Iowa was one of the few states that actually saw a red wave this last cycle. It's because of each and every one of you being engaged. Okay. Q&A, and guess what happens when we elect Republicans? We get things done. We don't talk about it, we do it. We tell you what we're gonna do, then we get to work and we get it done. And when I said parents matter, it wasn't a campaign slogan. It was a promise, and we delivered. In the first 2 weeks of the legislative session, we passed one of the boldest universal school choice programs in the country. And we've set off an educational freedom revolution across America. And we followed up. I won't tick through the legislative accomplishments, and believe me, with the media here, it's hard, Tim, for me not to do that, because I'm trying to raise the profile of Iowa, and you know, you're bringing the media, and it's hard for me not to do that. No, but we need to get to him. That's why we're here. But just know, working with the legislature, we are balancing the budget. We're growing economies. We're cutting taxes. We're driving educational freedom. We are empowering parents. We're keeping our communities safe by backing our men and women who keep us and our communities safe. Let's give it up for law enforcement and what they do every single day. I will tout one thing, because I'm very proud about this, and then I'm going to try to keep moving fast. We just didn't talk about cutting government. We did it. I cut 21 agencies from my cabinet. We went from 37 down to 16, a 1,400-page bill that we got through the legislature. Not only, yeah, you can really do it. We are streamlining government. We're already seeing efficiencies. It's amazing to see what we're uncovering as we're looking at this. And just a little side note, we're projected to save Iowans $215 million over the next 4 years, and I can tell you without hesitation, that's conservative. So it's gonna be better than that. So anyway, my point to that is I believe in Iowa, we're showcasing the alternatives to the chaos and crisis and just overreach and insanity that we're seeing on a daily basis. People are so sick and tired of the incompetence, the disconnect from reality. I think we're really tired of elitists lecturing to us while they're stripping away our freedoms at will. Crazy times in which we live. And the country is on decline. But you know what? And this is what you're going to hear from Tim tonight. We are a resilient country. And we can come back, but we cannot take another 4 years of Joe Biden in the White House. That is an understatement. We know that for sure. So we're going to ask you to show up. We're going to ask you to lean in. We started here in Iowa with the First in the Nation caucus. I want to set a record. All of you here are going to help us do that, but you got to get more people there so that we can make sure that we started off right and that we get a Republican in the White House this next election cycle. So with that, I get to introduce the main speaker of the night. And I can tell you without hesitation, some of the things I admire so much about Senator Scott is your faith, your optimism in this country, your heart. I love the fact that your story really is reflective of the American dream, that it drives the libs crazy because it is an assault on what they perceive as happening. But I appreciate, I know you share my passion for school choice, and that, as you've always said, if you give parents a choice, our kids have a chance. And we're so grateful for you, and I can tell you, and all of you, every time I leave an event that Tim has spoke at, I leave feeling more hopeful about our country and the opportunities that are ahead of us. So thanks for serving, thanks for caring, thanks for having a huge heart for this country and the Americans that live here. Thank you. God bless you. Let's give it up for Tim Scott.
Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you very much. It is good to be in Ankeny. God bless you. Thank you very much. All right. Have a seat. Wow. What a crowd. Governor, you do a really good job of getting people out here. So thank you very much. And you did. David, good to see you again. David and I served in Congress together, good friends. Thank you for making the trip and being here this afternoon. Appreciate you so much. Well, it is good to be here. I will say without any question, I left D.C. just a few hours ago and landed several minutes ago just to be here with y'all. And I will say one of the reasons why I'm here is because I believe America can do for anyone what she's done for me. We have to focus on restoring hope, creating opportunities, and protecting the America we all love. And for me, protecting America starts on our southern border. We have to build the wall and close. We have to build the wall and close our southern border. Think about 70,000 Americans have died to fentanyl in 1 year. Build a wall for $10 billion, for around $5 billion. We could have the surveillance on our border to stop and protect us from the flow of fentanyl coming across our border. Under President Biden, we've seen over 6 million illegal crossings of our southern border. And that was before the elimination of Title 42 that could lead to a 50% increase. And over 100 people on our national security watch list caught at our southern border. The world is completely aware of the fact that in America, our southern border is wide open, which means it's insecure, it's unsafe, and we deserve better as a nation. As your president, I would finish the wall, use the technology already available to stop the flow of fentanyl. And if you don't control your back door, it's not your house. And if you don't control your southern border, it might not be our country. So we have to restore common sense to our border. Now, I know that y'all have heard of the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, why they call it a reduction act, none of us will ever know. But it created about $82 billion of additional funding for the IRS. I have legislation that was signed as president that would take that money. Now, how many of y'all think we need more IRS agents spying at your accounts? Did I see one hand in the back? Oh, he was getting ready to blow his nose. I'm sorry. I would take that money and put half of the money, $40 billion, on our southern border, giving our Border Patrol agents a raise. Instead of hiring 87,000 IRS agents, why not hire some more ICE and Border Patrol agents instead? Just use common sense. And to the Mexican cartels, I've been saying this for months and months and months. They must cease to exist if they're going to kill 70,000 Americans. And as president, I would use every asset, every arrow in the quiver to stop the Mexican cartels from killing 70,000 Americans. And this raises the big issue on our border, which is there's this new axis of evil, and I talk about it a lot. It's Russia and Iran and China. China is the greatest long-term threat to who we are as a nation. The precursors for fentanyl come from China. They're flown to Mexico where they manufacture fentanyl. And then the cartels bring it across the southern border. Closing that southern border for less than $15 billion in a nation that spends $7 trillion is easy to do. Very easy to do. The second thing I would say as I think about your wonderful governor, when I talk about restoring hope, I think about school choice. I'm one of the co-founders of the School Choice Caucus in Congress. I went to 4 different elementary schools by the 4th grade because there's a transient nature in poverty. When my parents got divorced when I was about 7 years old, it was one of the most important emotional events in my life. And unfortunately, when you grow up in a poor household with a single mom, you move a lot. So when you have a governor that doesn't see a political issue on education, but sees an opportunity to equip my mom with more options for her kids, that's just restoring hope, in my opinion. And I can't think of a better governor in America, and I say this at home too, who's led on the issue of school choice than Kim Reynolds. Thank you. And here's the funny thing. When you talk to the governor, it's not like this. She doesn't do this. Well, you know, school choice was such a wonderful issue, and we had a good time talking about it. And then no, this is what she does. Oh, my God, we got it done. It is a miracle. We had 18,000 people sign up. 18,000? I'm sorry. I said 18,000. It was 18,500. I missed the 500. I mean, I'm in her office a couple weeks ago, and she is bouncing off the walls because she's so excited. And the first year they expected 12,000. 14. I'm off on this. She's like, I know you have a microphone, young man, but you better get this right. My bad. Mike? Michael? Yeah, Chief of Staff, Senator? Yeah. Okay. She is so excited about the 14,000, but when it hit 15,000, she texted me. She said, oh my gosh. And now it's at 18.5 and growing. Here's what that means. In a state of 3.2 million people, a 7,500 or so scholarship per student is going to produce for generations Iowans who are equipped with the most important tool to transform their lives and this state. Because there's a governor they may never meet who did one of the most important things in restoring hope. Governor Reynolds. God bless you. That's protecting America, restoring hope, creating opportunities to me simply means protect the goose that lays the golden eggs. And for me, that's our economy. There's a free market economy that is the marvel of the world that needs to be protected. Because in today's Biden America, socialism is growing in the regulatory state, growing in our tax system, and facets of our lives are being consumed by this new powerful threat brought to us with way too much spending and way too little responsibility and accountability. I will change that. I am so thankful to be an American. I am so proud to be blessed with the greatest citizenship on God's green earth. I'll close with this and be happy to answer your questions. My grandfather was born and raised in the segregated South. Born in 1921, Jim Crow era, no rights for an African American. When we moved into his house at 7 years old, he looked me in my eyes, and this is a guy who understood the indignities of a very different America, a very different South Carolina. And he said to me, son, you can be bitter or you can get better, but you can't be both. One of the lessons that we need to learn as Americans is that the windshield is really big and the rearview mirror is really small. We should spend less time in the rearview mirror and more time in the windshield because American progress is palpable. We should all thank God we're Americans. All right. Well, let's get this party started. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. For those who may not have heard the question, I'll repeat it. I only repeat the questions I like, so if you don't hear me repeat the question, just know it was not an accident. But this one, what he said was that the state of Iowa is doing a really good job with its technical schools, and as we watch the transformation of our economy, high-tech jobs will be more important, not less important. So how would I, as President of the United States, incorporate the success that we see here in Iowa into a national agenda? He's not old enough to remember something called SHOP. Maybe he is, I don't know. He smiled really big. So when I was in school, sir, we had something called SHOP. And SHOP was one of the most important classes one could take because you learned practical skills that would last you a lifetime. I like SHOP. I think SHOP is really good for people. And so as President of the United States, I would create my Made in America agenda. In order for us to succeed as a nation, I think we have to focusing our attention on creating 10 million new jobs in this nation, well, 3+ million jobs in the energy sector, 2 million jobs through innovation, and between 4 and 5 million jobs in high-tech manufacturing. We should bring our jobs back home from China and across the world and create high-paying, high-tech manufacturing jobs for Americans. For us to have that, future, sir, we are going to have to recalibrate our education system. We started telling people, I'm old enough to remember in the 1970s and early 80s, they used to have these big posters. On these posters, they cut the poster basically in half. They had this one guy in a suit, and the other guy, a blue-collar guy with a hard hat on, and he was really, really dirty. And they said you wanted to be the guy in the suit. I think that's actually not true. Not everybody wants to go to college. Some people want to work with their hands. We should celebrate work in America. All work has dignity. Our education system must reflect that there is dignity in all work. Therefore, we're going to train Americans on how to be contributing individuals to our workforce by how we educate them. And they tell me, based on lots of studies, that around the 7th or 8th grade, we should be giving people a dual track. Pick one. You can change your mind. But never discount the value of a 6-figure income working in high-tech manufacturing. And the good news, I appreciate those 13 people back there. And the governor would tell me there's only 9, but I'm going to assume it's 13. I just left Washington. I'm having a great time. This is fantastic. So please, let's enjoy the time together. Okay, good. Yeah, so I literally believe that if we are to focus on the future, high-tech manufacturing is going to be key. And whether you love the guy or don't love the guy, one of the folks who's proving that we as Americans can make things again, and we can build the largest factories and the largest buildings in the history of the world, is Elon Musk. Right now, he's building the largest factory, the largest building in the history of the world in less than 18 months. We are remarkable people, but we have to believe in ourselves. And when we do, I believe my Made in America agenda will create more than 10 million jobs. And SHOP will be a part of it.
What would you say is your biggest accomplishment in your 12 years in Congress?
My biggest accomplishment in Congress, there's just so many. I'm trying to be humble. Just kidding. It's very easy. For me, the biggest accomplishment I've had, I was given a year in advance the responsibility of rewriting the tax code for this nation. I was one of 3 authors given that task, myself, Rob Portman, and Pat Toomey. And then we added later in the summer the great John Thune. And having the chance to rewrite the personal side of the tax code, which was my responsibility, was a huge blessing from the good Lord and the people of South Carolina who elected me. Having a chance to cut taxes for the first time since Ronald Reagan comprehensively was really cool. I mean, some people don't think of sitting in a room with thousands of pages and flipping through them as cool. I was giddy. It was like a Cowboys football game. I mean, anyways, yeah, no one clapped for Cowboys. Okay, back to y'all. So literally think about what we did in 2017 as we were rewriting the tax code. I thought about my mom. I've talked about her a lot on the campaign trail because she really is my American hero. I can't think of anybody that I respect and admire more than a woman who works 16-hour days, 3 days a week, changing bedpans, enrolling patients. And then she had to raise this knucklehead. She deserves a lot from God. But I thought about her, and the average single mom in 2018, 2017 made about $40,000 a year, raising a couple of kids. We were able to cut her taxes by 73%, over 70%. What a blessing. And that was done by the Great Opportunity Party. The Republicans cut the single mama's taxes. People think that you can give compassion. Well, we can reduce the burden so we can make compassion felt. Then we did something else. We said, you know what, we're not going to just focus on the single mamas. We're going to look at the dual income households. We cut taxes by 60+%. We promised Americans about $4,000. We gave back a little over $4,400. But it's your money. You deserve it. See, I believe that if you have your money, you'll make the best decisions for your family. You don't need somebody in Washington to do it for you. And then I also created opportunity zones. Opportunity zones was created by this thought that as a poor kid growing up in a really interesting area, that sometimes there are really smart kids living in poverty, but opportunities are elusive, they're too far away. So I wanted to attract investors back into the poorest parts of America. $50 billion later, we have brought in the strongest anti-poverty program, bringing over $50 billion into the poorest communities, and not a single of those dollars are federal tax dollars. They're all private sector dollars. I will concede I stole a part of that idea from Jack Kemp. Y'all remember Jack Kemp? He was a bleeding heart conservative, but he was a brilliant guy. He had something called empowerment zones, where he wanted to bring more resources into the poorest areas, and I took that model, recalibrated it. Instead of focusing on the government, I focused on real job creators in the private sector, and we're seeing the most remarkable things happen right now. So that's the greatest accomplishment I've had in my time in Congress. Oh, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I volunteer for a number of senior organizations.
Thank you.
The seniors are concerned about Social Security. It's going broke. Their paychecks would be cut. What do you see through your windshield on Social Security?
Thank you, sir. My windshield is a very simple windshield to articulate. If you are on Social Security, like my mama, I will protect your Social Security, period. No questions. We should always honor our promises as Americans. We have to make sure that our seniors on fixed incomes, weathering about 16% aggregate inflation over the last 2 years, don't see their money disappear in part in the 2030s. And what the young man is referencing is that in the 2030s, there are indications that Social Security is underfunded. Therefore, there's an expectation of about a 34% cut sometime in the mid to late 2030s. We can stop that. I believe that Social Security should be in a vault where politicians cannot touch the money. Just don't trust them with your retirement money. Put it in a vault, lock the door, and there is no key. What you put in and what you expect based on the analysis of your income and the time that you put in work should always be there. We are going to have to take a holistic look at our entire entitlement state. We're spending about $1.1 trillion today on Social Security. We're spending about $850 billion, thereabout, on Medicare, about $400 billion, thereabout, on veterans benefits. We're spending about another $350 to $400 billion on interest only on our debt, which does not include the last 11 interest rate increases. Let me say that in numbers. If we had that 5.25% woven into our debt structure, our debt payments would go from under $400 billion to right around $1.5 trillion. But our revenue stream is around $5 trillion. So 1/3 of all the dollars we're bringing in would go to just our debt, not our military, not education, not social programs, and not our entitlement benefits. We're going to have to learn how to live within a budget I'm awake. I'm awake. I'm awake. We got to learn to live within a budget. That's why I think we should do what Iowans have to do and what the governor does here. We need a balanced budget amendment passed by the people. It'll take us a minute to get there, but we need to get there. This is my last comment on this question. Longest answer in American history, right here. Wow. But this year, government plans to spend around $7 trillion, even though they know we're only bringing in $4.8 trillion. So you set a budget 40% higher than your revenues. That's irresponsible. But that's exactly what this administration is doing. It's wrong. We're passing on a bill to unborn Americans on $95,000 per person the day they're born. Yes, sir.
What's your thought on the FBI? What's your plan? And why is the FBI and DEA redundant on both doing drug investigations?
Yeah, so his question was, what's my plan for the FBI and why are there duplicate alphabet soup agencies like the DEA or the ATF doing similar work? My theory, so this is an interesting concept. 17% of Republicans trust the FBI. Incredible. 83% of Republicans no longer trust the FBI. Here's what you do about the FBI. The first thing we have to do is fire Joe Biden. The second thing you do is fire Merrick Garland over the DOJ. And then the third thing you do is fire Christopher Wray at the FBI. If I had my druthers, I would probably ask my good friend Trey Gowdy to take over the FBI and bring some common sense to that agency. He's an objective prosecutor with an incredible experience, undefeated record, and a man of high integrity. We should actually eliminate every single political appointee in all of the Department of Justice. I'm actually sick and tired of being sick and tired of watching the weaponization of the DOJ against their political opponents, against pro-life activists who have a SWAT team show up at their house, against parents who simply show up at school board meetings. They're labeled domestic terrorists. We've got to purge the entire political environment of the Department of Justice. And here's what I mean by that. I don't mean for Republicans, and I don't mean against Democrats. I mean for Americans, period. And I would suggest that we have a wholesale evaluation led by your governor of the entire federal government. I'm not going to say what position she would be in, but let me just say this. We would work hand in glove to make sure that we take a look at all the agencies. There are billions and billions of dollars of duplication in the federal government. I took a whack at it a few years ago when I looked at all the economic development programs that went through like 30 or 40 different agencies. And it was just remarkable how much overhead expenses are embedded in something, Ronald Reagan said it the best. I'll say it with fewer words. The closest thing to eternal life is a federal government agency. It is time for us to confront that definition of eternal life. So I would look at all the agencies and see if there is a way for us to have a synergistic approach to the responsibilities of the federal government. And then we also need to decide there are things that we do in the federal government that aren't our responsibility. We actually need something like a 10th Amendment committee to have governors around this country say, y'all shouldn't be doing this at all, and you're not very good at it. Article 1, Section 8 enumerates the powers of the federal government, and about half of that has to do with national security. Lots of things we should stop doing as a federal government and let the states decide. Question back yonder. That's Southern for you. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So I do like your question, so I'll repeat it for the side of the audience as well. He's a seriously dude. That's kind of how he started it off, right? And then he had a comma. Seriously, dude. Look at what President Biden has done. He surrounded himself with a bunch of academics. You know, there's an old saying that if you can't do, you teach. I don't believe that completely. I will say, however, with President Biden's choices, they probably can do neither. They're not very good at what they do at all. I would completely, for the lack of a better politically correct term, gut them. Not the people, but their positions. And replace them. Because someone's going to say, Scott says gut people, but gut the positions. And bring in a whole slate of thinkers, objective thinkers who want to enforce the laws as written by Congress, number one, not the ones that they want to dream up, like they're doing at the SEC and the FDIC. Second thing I would say, as a guy whose life was radically transformed financially when I started a small business. Starting a small business is a wonderful experience in the end, a miserable experience in the beginning. In 1999, I was making $1,200 a month, working 95 hours a week. And it taught me a lot. I was signing the front of the paycheck for my employees, but not the back of the paycheck for me. For those of you too young to know what a paycheck is, this little piece of paper. Let me talk to you, young lady, right here. She's like, what's a paycheck? Right? It's like an ETF, you know, it comes in your account. But having that experience really taught me so much. And I love small business owners and entrepreneurs who understand the weight of government on your shoulders, how it stops you from hiring more people or investing in more equipment. So I would actually look for people in the private sector to come in and do the jobs. That would be my first step. And the good news is I have a lot of options, having been in business for 15 or 16 years on my own and 25 years in a couple of industries for a long period of time. I also have two brothers, by the way. How many, any of y'all have more than one sibling? Two, three, four? You have more than one sibling, you said, sir, right? You have 5? May the Lord bless you indeed. Okay. Or your parents, sir? Right, exactly. So I have an ugly brother and a good-looking brother. Okay? I thought it was funnier than that, sir. I really did. You should look at his face. He was like, I'm ashamed of that comment. I really am, actually, sir, but I have to continue the story. So my ugly brother went to the Air Force Academy. My good-looking brother was a command sergeant major in the Army. At 32 years service for my command sergeant major brother. God bless his soul. 26 years with the ugly guy. Let me say to all the veterans in this room right now, we owe you a debt of gratitude. We are free because of what you did. Thank you, every single one of you, for saving our nation over and over and over again. Saving the world through World War II. Sometimes we forget to take the time to just say, thank you. This is off the question, sir, but I'm here, so I'm going to finish it. But I did in 2014 a Vietnam veterans event in South Carolina. 2,500 folks showed up, and hundreds of them, with tears in their eyes, said, this is the first time we've ever been publicly thanked. We're a better nation than that. We should always respect men and women who put the uniform on to do what most of us, all of us, benefit from. Back to the story, sir. I would simply have my brother, both of them, help find their general officers who are all consistently conservative thinkers, and also use those folks to reinvent what our military used to be. The current group of leaders in our military are too interested in ESG and DEI and social experimentation to focus on warfighting. That is very dangerous for our men and women in uniform. I would restore one goal for our men and women in uniform, maybe two. First, be the greatest, most lethal fighting force on earth. And number two, come home safe, period.
As a farmer, I'm very interested in our biofuels industry. On the books, we have numerous facilities that want to expand or build new to embrace the new biofuels economy. As president, what would you do to maintain the current tax credits that they enjoy now, so they have certainty for building that the petroleum industry has enjoyed for 100 years? Would you support that, or maybe even continue it and make it stronger?
Talking about the RFS? Yes.
I'm talking about the biofuel credit for people that make the stuff.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert where I'm not an expert, number one. Number two, I'll just tell you exactly what I know. As a guy who's been supporting the Farm Bill for a number of years and supporting our agriculture, the one thing I can tell you about biofuels and RFS, here's a way for us to become less dependent on foreign oil, period. RFS allows America to depend less on Russian or Middle East oil by over 500,000 barrels is the last study I've seen. The importance of that cannot be reinforced more clearly than to say that America's energy future is America's national security. To the extent that we become less dependent on any other country than ourselves, we become more secure as a nation. I won't make a commitment I can't make, sir, because I'd have to understand them all, and not some. I understand a couple of them, so I won't pretend like I know something that I don't know. But I would be happy to take a look at all of the credits and see which ones I like and which ones I don't like. Because there are some in the new green energy movement that I don't like at all. $4,500 credit for someone who makes $800,000 to buy an electric vehicle, to me, means that you're putting the burden on the backs of someone making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. I just won't do that. So I would have to study the entire portfolio of credits to give you a clear, honest answer. Yes, sir.
Right now, I would hate to look at your job going forward to fight inflation, because the U.S. has enjoyed the benefits of globalization and free trade, and that's kept product prices low, but it's also hurt labor and entry-level jobs a lot. So going forward, as you're trying to fight inflation, how do you balance that with trying to protect entry-level labor and and people building themselves up from the ground up?
That's a good question. I'm thinking how to get the 5 questions you asked down to 1. That's the hard part. He asked a question about labor, inflation, entry-level jobs, and the future of our economy. And he did it with a smile on his face. Surprising. Let me say a couple things, hopefully getting to answer all of your questions, sir. Number one, technology is a scary thing for the future of work in many ways to many people. If you think about it, from the simple walk into a restaurant almost anywhere, whether it's a Subway or a McDonald's, you see where I eat. And what you'll find is that there's a little iPad there that you can just push on. Because technology is having strong impact on entry-level jobs, which is a major part of his conversation, his question. Here's the thing about business, and it's really interesting. More than $2 trillion of payroll today, over $2 trillion of payroll today, could have been eliminated through technology. Small business owners, by and large, have decided to keep the labor because it's good for the overall community. And thank God for smart business people who don't just simply look at the bottom line, but understand that there are multiple ways to measure the bottom line. Second thing we have to do is look at the opportunity with innovation to use technology to create more jobs at home than we lose abroad because of the labor shift that you talked about through trade agreements like NAFTA. So one of the things that we see happening today is we're seeing through the use of technology and innovation, jobs are actually coming home. There is a company called Otis Elevators. We just brought them I had nothing to do with it, by the way. But they just returned from Mexico to Florence, South Carolina, because we were able to use innovation and a little technology to even part of the labor cost and bring those jobs home. Second thing I'd say is that when you look at the use of technology and innovation, we are still starting to see these new hydroponic developments called agricultural tech centers that are bringing home jobs that were lost to Mexico and around the world so that we can grow our own food more here and somewhere else. So we need to be smart on that. That's why I said that my 10 million job objective through my Made in America agenda is going to focus on bringing those jobs home by using innovation in a smart way. We're also going to have to make sure that high-tech manufacturing descends upon America through the FDI's, foreign direct investment. And that's happening already throughout the country. So if we could continue that trend and accelerate it by focusing specifically on incentives in our tax and our economy to bring jobs home to my opportunity zones 2.0 that would attract more businesses back to America by looking at more tax incentives. That would be very helpful. But we're going to have a high-tech manufacturing revolution in this country as we start recognizing the importance of being independent. Our minerals, our medicine, and our microchips, we are very dependent on foreign nations and some adversarial to America, to include China, for too much. We can break that or start decoupling our economy by focusing on bringing those jobs home. If we did those 3 or 4 things, we would have a serious wave. And then, as one of the first questions back there, as it relates to SHOP, creating a new wave of employees would be helpful. Today's farmers can't find the labor. So in part, we don't just have a jobs problem, we have the most people, most men 18 to 54, out of the workforce than we've ever had in the history of the country. We have lost, well, not all of us, they have lost the importance of the dignity of work. We have to restore that. Howdy.
So I've been an Alzheimer's advocate and volunteer for over 30 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And there are a couple bills dealing with Alzheimer's that are scheduled to sunset in 2025. So I would like to know that you would do what you can to push Congress to continue those bills, to continue to help research, as we know there's been a new early onset treatment that has finally been okayed by the FDA and CMS.
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to know that you will and can promise me that you will do all that you can for Alzheimer's.
I can make that commitment.
Okay.
I can and will do all I can for Alzheimer's. Number one. Number two, I was the leading Republican on the Aging Committee up until last year. I spent a lot of time researching. Thank you for asking that question. There are a lot of other questions I would never be able to answer, but that one I worked on last year. And this is unfortunately a problem that is growing. Remember, 1 out of 5 Americans will be over the age of 65 before the year of 2040. We'll have more people over 65 than we have under 18. And dementia and Alzheimer's are two of the fastest growing issues we're going to have to confront. Some have suggested, and I don't know if this number is 100% accurate, by the way, so tell me if it's not. $7 trillion is the long-term cost that we're looking at for Alzheimer's.
That's about right.
It's a massive, unconsidered, not unconsidered. We have not fully appreciated the absolute magnitude of Alzheimer's on the American people as we become an older society. And what she's asking for is really common sense in the arena of dealing with a few of the really important challenges this nation is going to face that we are not completely prepared for on the healthcare front. All right, yes, sir. When they start reading the question, it makes me nervous. Continue, sir.
It's not that bad.
I'll walk back with the microphone so no one can hear you, just in case you're wrong.
I thought if I spoke up, you wouldn't have to repeat it.
Darn.
In order to win the nomination, you have to draw from Trump supporters. Trump supporters are no doubt going to be comparing you to some of your policies and promises to what Trump did, the good things he did. Now, there's 5 P's in the campaign that I always look at: personality. I like you. You're a good person.
I'll give you more time on that point.
Right. Politics, I think your politics are positive. You're not running against other people in a hateful way. You're running for something. I really admire that. Performance, you never know until you get into office. Trump could have done more if he wasn't blocked. Every governor, every executive, every president could have done more if he weren't blocked. We'll wait and see on that. But it boils down to the last 2 P's: promises and policies. I'd like you to be as specific as you can about the policies and promises. One thing about Trump, and I know this is about you, not about him, but he made promises, he kept them where it was possible. And I would like to know some specifics about what promises you'll make, what policies you will retain or keep, and what you would not, so we have something to contrast as well. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Where do I start? Once upon a time, there was a little fella who grew up in South Carolina who wanted to be president. Thank you, sir. Yes. Can I borrow your book there, please? So I ran on a campaign slogan since 2004, I think. Part of my campaign slogan has been promises made, promises kept. If you want to know what I'm going to do, see what I have done and compare what I got accomplished. My first bill in Congress in 2011 was to reduce our corporate tax rate from 35%, the highest in the world, down to 23%, because I felt like our 35% was so anti-competitive that it was embarrassing, especially against our high-income competitors called the OECD. 6 years later, I had the good fortune of writing a major part of the tax bill that took the taxes from 35% to 21%. So I would work very hard to rescind the recent tax increases that we've seen from President Biden. Good morning. Number 2, he's got like 19 questions. I'll get to you in just a second. I got to finish the other 18 real quick. I'm almost there. So number 2, I would say that, as I said to the governor and gave her major praise because she earned it by doing for little kids like me what needed to be done on school choice. I appreciate y'all clapping for her. One more time. I founded the School Choice Caucus 7 or 8 years ago. It has been one of the most important parts of my opportunity agenda. As President of the United States, I would push to take the 2 major buckets of money that comes from the Department of Education. One is Title I for our low-performing schools, about $24 to $30 billion or so. I would try my best to make those dollars backpackable. Wherever the kid goes, the money follows. Title II dollars, somewhere around 11 to 15 billion, are for our kids with special needs. I would give the parents the option. If you've ever visited a school where there are kids with special needs, you know what I know. There's no such thing as a category for just all kids with special needs. They're so nuanced and unique that we need to make sure their parents have all the options humanly possible to do for their kids what every single parent wants done for their kids, maximize their potential. On the military front, which is a really important part of the equation, we must stop, and I said this earlier, so I won't go very long. We have to stop experimenting with our military. We are losing, we are not meeting our recruitment goals anymore, in part because you can't get people to serve the country when you say you have to have this vaccine, you have to believe in this philosophy, you have to do this with the resources, and you don't have enough ammunition and equipment to fight the wars. We are doing a great disservice to our military. I would change that completely, philosophically, and focus our attention back on honoring the commitments that we make to our men and women. That would include our veterans department as well, allowing our veterans. Let me just say on promises. What I promise, I will accomplish. What I commit to trying to do, I will try to do. Making sure you know the difference between the two is incredibly important. When you don't control the House, the Senate, and the White House, and 60 votes is the control of the Senate, you ought to be very careful what you say you're going to do. But I would guarantee you, I would close our southern border, period. I'm gonna go to other questions though. Ma'am? Okay, so I'm sorry, sit back down, sir. Ma'am first, and then man second. So I'll get back to you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My question also concerns health care.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is an issue that has pretty much vanished from the political conversation. We were told for many years that all we needed was insurance. Now in Iowa, over 93% of Iowans are on some form of health insurance, but what we don't have is doctors or nurses in our hospitals or even people to answer 911. If you are elected during your term, healthcare demand will go up 50%, our workforce will shrink 50%. How will you handle it?
Well, a couple things. Number one, I don't know the statistics on the shrinkage of our workforce in the next 4 years. I don't think it's going to be that up. It's not going to be that precipitous drop. It's coming, but it's coming over time. In the end, there are two things that we should start thinking about in order to control our long-term health care costs. It's transparency and accountability. Today, we do not know what it costs for almost anything in healthcare. Literally in South Carolina, there are 2 zip codes that are contiguous, 29420292464. One's in Mount Pleasant. We call that the land of milk and honey at home. And 06 is where I grew up in North Charleston. It could cost you 4 times more for the same procedure in Mount Pleasant than it does in North Charleston. That's just wrong, and that's the way it works across the country. And the second thing we never do is we never actually measure the outcomes of those procedures. So some procedures, let's say a knee replacement, done in one zip code versus the other zip code, costs you 4 times more, but your recovery isn't 4 times faster. No one understands that. The advent of electronic medical records, plus transparency, plus accountability, and plus looking at the outcomes and not just the transactions in medicine, I believe could lower our healthcare costs by about 20%. In addition to that, the major payer for all healthcare in this country is the federal government, about over $2 trillion. We need to audit how we do what we do across every agency in the government so that we improve our outcome quick, fast, and in a hurry.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to give you a little pushback.
Please do.
You're talking about fraud.
Yes.
You're talking about transparency, and I'm talking about there not being a doctor.
Yes. So,
A third of Iowa's doctors are age 62 and older right now.
right. So here's the other. Thank you for asking the question twice. Okay. Yes. The governor said they just did tort reform last year, so she's helping me cheat on this exam. Thank you very much. Listen, I'm growing one in my family right now. So let me just tell you how this works from my perspective. My nephew is in his final year of residency. There's a estimated 25,000 doctor shortfall in the next 5 years is the numbers that I'm familiar with. She says it's higher. We can debate the numbers. Obviously, I miss the numbers sometimes. So here's what I can tell you. That the fact of the matter is that whether it's 50,000 or 25,000, what we have to do is incentivize students to take a second look at continuing their education. One of the ways that we do that, and this is where President Biden was completely like a goose lost in a rainstorm, trying to cancel all the student loan debt, which would have cost American people $1 trillion. Instead of doing that, why not incent doctors to continue their education, students to continue their education by reducing their student loan burden over a 10-year period of time by working in hard-hit or economically challenged areas or in rural America where we need more doctors. The other thing that we're going to have to continue to do is use telemedicine that I actually wrote the legislation on to make sure that our best doctors can go into areas where there are no doctors, because today, using technology, we can actually bridge that gap while we fill the residency seats that are currently available. And the third thing we have to do is that the residency puzzle, which is a fascinating problem, is a problem. Hospitals who control residency do not always fill all their positions, but they never give them up. And so there are hundreds, if not thousands, of students, at least in the Southeast, that can't get a residency because some hospital's holding on to it but not using it. We have to reconsider how we actually allow for those really important positions to be filled, whether they want to fill them or not. So it's a long-term problem. Sir, I asked you to wait, and you were very kind. Thank you for allowing us to go ladies first.
My question's kind of off the point, but what scares me is this upcoming election, because everybody, at least I know from all the facts I have gathered, that there was some, in 2020, there were some big irregularities in the election. And people would say, no, 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 but I guarantee you there was, because I know a lot of people in law enforcement. And this scares me with the upcoming election. Plus, another thing that scares me with the upcoming election is we've got another egomaniac, just like Biden, over here at Trump, that's running for office. Trump has a big following. If he is elected in the primary and he goes off and runs for as an independent, he's going to draw a lot of Republican voters out of this section
Yes, sir.
over to him, which he has now a big following. Everybody's with him. How is the Republican Party, and what can we do to help deal with that situation so we have a president, not another egomaniac in the office?
Thank you, sir. I solemnly promise I'm not an egomaniac. I will take your vote, sir. Please caucus for me. Please, please, please. Number one. Number two, so the underlying question, however, and I only have time for one more, and then I want to walk around and shake some hands. I'd kiss some babies, but there aren't any, so I'll look for somebody else to kiss. Anyway, sir, the underlying question, however, is a question of election integrity. And so what we saw in 2020, and I may, as she said, push back a little bit on the underlying question or premise. Here's what I would say. On 2020, for the first time during the middle of the COVID pandemic, a lot of states changed their election laws, or really changed the way we conducted our elections. Constitutionally, elections are state issues, and they should remain state issues. Many, many, many Republican states changed their laws to make up for the challenges that we saw in 2020. As an example, in Georgia, they had, for the first time, drop boxes. They had mail-in ballots with no signature verification. It was just a nightmare. This cycle, we had those states, and I think it was 17 red states, all changed their election laws to reflect common sense and the trend in elections, which would include some early voting, signature verification for mail-in ballots, drop boxes that are secure, a lot of integrity woven back into the legal system, which led to some of the highest turnouts and the highest confidence in states around our country. I think that is the path we should stay on as it relates to making sure that there is integrity in our elections. And finally, part of the messaging that we had in 2020 was don't trust early voting. We as Republicans completely missed the momentum that was happening on early voting and mail-in ballots. States are going in that direction. We should prepare for the inevitable and not fight it as if we can stop it from happening. Last question, sir.
I've been an educator most of my adult life in the community college system.
Yes, sir.
And I've always tried to teach my students to think for themselves, research all aspects
Awesome.
of the subject, and make up their own minds. The Department of Education has never educated anybody. Would you eliminate the Department of Education and send that money back to the states where it can be done?
Yes. The very, very easy answer, of course, is yes. So let me just give you the longer but similar answer. Unless we have a red wave and we win it all, getting that accomplished is impossible. But what we can do is starve the Department of Education of the money, letting you keep it in the states. One of the things I talked about earlier was block granting, basically, those two major buckets of money that come from the federal government, so that your governors around the country can decide how they make those dollars portable for their kids in complement or in concert with school choice programs or other programs around the state. If we can, I mean, the federal government, we spend about $775 a year on K through 12 education, $775 billion. Only 10% comes from the federal government. If we could block grant those resources, as many as humanly possible, that don't stay in Washington, we basically put a wall up and say, thank you for your money, please keep it. That's the way you starve the department and accomplish the goal of making sure that our Department of Education is responsible, because they don't get to spend your money. Your governor does. Thank you all very much. Let me close. One final thought. Please, you can stay on your seat. This won't take but 30 seconds. But I brought a couple of my books because I think it's important to know my story, and I took the time and wrote a book called America: A Redemption Story, which really does focus on how much progress we've made in this nation. I am happy to give these books away, and if you read it, please share it, because I think people need to understand how good we are as a nation. We always get better. God bless you.